Welcome to the channel. My name is Trevor Morgan. I like to share stories that inspire, encourage, and ignite. This is the story of Grandma Grace. Buckle up, you want to stay to the end. You will not expect the ending of this story. A widow from rural Indiana in her 70s. This story is going to prove that you don't need to be the president, the CEO, or have 1 million followers on Instagram to have a high impact life. Grandma Grace is a widow from rural Indiana. It's hard to say that word, rural Indiana. She raised 5 boys with her husband, and later in life her husband did pass away and she became a widow. And instead of wasting away the rest of the years of her life, she wanted to leave an impact. She wanted to sprint to the finish line, not merely limp there. And so she actually prayed. She made the comment that she didn't know what God could do with a widow like her or with a woman like her, but if He would show her, then she would do it. And one day she had a prison ministry magazine. She's flipping through it, and she ends up seeing this ad, or seeing this insert from a prisoner who had recently come to Christ, and his name was Bobby. And he actually was wanting a spiritual grandmother to disciple him. What are the odds? Grandma Grace contacts the editor of the magazine. She gets in touch with Bobby, and she begins discipling Bobby and going through Bible studies, praying for him, and checking in on him. Eventually, Bobby led his cellmate to Christ. And then Bobby's cellmate became Grandma Grace's second spiritual grandson. Well, eventually it turned into several in that prison as they were leading others to Christ. And eventually they started to get transported. So some of them went to Alabama, some of them went to Texas. The spiritual multiplication that happened was wilder than anything Grandma Grace ever imagined. As her spiritual grandson started to multiply and started to spread out, there was 3 prisons now involved in her ministry. She was sending Bible studies back and forth and corresponding with so many other people. Soon in her living room, her couch and her coffee table began to be replaced with computers. There was filing cabinets in her closet, no room to put jackets, filled with Bible study material. Eventually, the prisoners in all these other prisons started to multiply and get out of prison and go other places. Some of them even ended up in Latin America, back with their families, leading them to Christ, who then they would reach out to Grandma Grace and ask her to be the spiritual grandmother to those family members as well. Soon there was around 1,000 Spanish-speaking people sending letters and corresponding with Grandma Grace. So much work to be done that she actually prayed for God to send her a translator, for God to provide a translator for her, which God answered, and she was paired with a girl named Clara, who was an ex-Spanish teacher, who would come over 3 times a week to translate these letters with Grandma Grace. And then eventually Grandma Grace had 7 college students volunteering to help her in this effort. What an amazing story. But it doesn't stop there. As the years went on, multiplication starts to spread across the globe. And there's so many, she has these dots all over this little map, of the states and around Latin America. There's dots everywhere. And these dots were representing all of her spiritual grandchildren and their extras, if you want to call it that, the people that they had poured into, and then the people that they had poured into, and the domino ripple effect that took place. And eventually, after years of this ministry, it was made known that Grandma Grace was corresponding with over 10,000 people, all from a little farmhouse in rural Indiana. A widow, gray-haired widow. Doesn't sound like the world's definition of a high-impact individual, does it? No, I guess not. What does that say about impact? It must not really matter about occupation or about platform, about status. But what about love? What about obedience? What about open-handedness? What about being available? And Grandma Grace loved her spiritual grandchildren as if they were her own. And they were her own. In her eyes. God can do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine. Give God your yes. Hope this is encouraging.